So who are AXA Climate and why have I brought AXA Climate here? AXA Climate was launched in 2019 with a first objective of helping large companies and public institutions successfully adapt to the climate and environment. To achieve this mission, the company is composed of 4 main business lines. We've got insurance, where we are a world leader. We're present in 40 countries with parametric insurance, which use AXA Climate trigger payments after a few hours using climate-based indicators, and that can cover drought, wind speed, wildfire, etc. The second part is training, and this is something that in AXA UK we've recently launched for brokers and customers. So the Climate School is composed of more than 40 hours of highly scientific digital content, and it provides sustainability training for large companies, their employees, to help a company transition all professionals. In AXA Insurance, so worldwide, we have 146,000 employees. Every one of our employees has gone through Climate School. Just now, we've had a completion rate of 91% of the 146,000 employees, and we've had some great feedback. So that's now available to you as brokers and our customers. We also have a consulting arm in AXA Climate, which helps companies successfully adapt to climate change and biodiversity loss. And finally, we've got financing where we can unlock investments of projects that accelerate and scale the environmental transition. Since 2022, AXA Climate has adopted a new purpose, and that's the making of regenerative business universal, and so ensuring business operate to a living system respecting planetary boundaries. As I mentioned a minute ago, we only have to look at the news agenda this week on heat and flooding across the globe that is impacting populations, business communities, and every community we know. We can think back to the recent freeze incident. It looked very benign in the UK, but quickly developed into a significant incident, particularly for household insurers across the UK, where we saw large negative impacts on the results of businesses in the retail part. For me, if you're in the insurance sector, climate should be on your agenda, as it will influence how we do business and the results today, but also for decades to come. Understanding what climate change is and having the knowledge to make change is something that each of us individually can either look out the window and leave it to someone else, or look in the mirror and ask what we can do personally. With that thought, I'd really like to hand you over to François from a AXA Climate team, and who in fact was a broker previously in a different life, to take you through a webinar. François, can I pass over to you?
Thank you, Dougie, and very pleased to be with you, though I am on the other side of the channel, as you can recognize my French accent, and sorry for that. If I do some mistakes in English, I am in advance sorry. So thinking about your role, most of you are brokers. I was a broker, as Dougie said. And when you think about your role currently, you can be 100% sure that your role will be different in 10 years or in 20 years due to climate change. And you can understand now systemic changes, systemic challenges that will happen in the future. If you understand it now, you will change your role proactively and not reactively. So to rethink your role, you can first understand what's happening. If we go to next slide, you can understand that there is an emergency to act. This emergency to act will create some needs for corporates to transition. So really, if you are not convinced that there is an emergency to act, we can look at, in the next slide, what's happening globally. Where do you think it takes place? In Florida, for the first one, in Malaysia, okay, in California, in South Korea. Okay, that's fine. It does not happen in Europe. So we are not concerned by global warming. You may think about that. Now let's go to next slide and take your Slido. Take your Slido and you go to you use your app and you answer to the question that is raised by Slido. Where is which of these pictures, you have 4 pictures on this slide, A, B, C, D. Which of these pictures are in the UK? You can answer now with Slido. For the moment, I have 8 answers. Please, I need more answers. Any additional answers? It's a bit difficult, I can agree. Okay, I have 33 answers and 33. So we have 34 answers. So let's stop now and edit the answer. So the right answer is B. In A, you have Belgium and Germany, some floods that happened in 2021 lead to 200 deaths and major infrastructure damage in Germany and in Belgium. In those 2 countries, Belgium and Germany, flood insurance is not mandatory. Only 23% of German householders are insured by a flood insurance. So most of those damages were not insured. On B, it's UK in 2022. And there are some lots of expectation of more wildfires in the UK coming. So they dealt last year with nearly 25,000 wildfires and almost 4 times more than recorded in 2021. In Italy in 2022, 2 damages, in fact. So one peril, drought, leading to 2 damages. The first damages is loss of culture, but the second damages is salinization. Salinization of the field, leading to 2 billion euro of losses. Salinization of Po River is a very difficult, is hardly to manage because there is no immediate solutions against salinization. And in France in 2022, we suffer from 33 heat wave days in June, July, and August, resulting in more than 10,000 deaths in 2022. So you see that global warming is taking place in Europe, in the UK, in France, and more generally in Europe right now. So there is an emergency to act. So let's go to next slide. There is also an emergency to act due to what science predict on that. So what science say? Science say that first, if you go to next slide, first, there is a small increase of an average value. But when you look at this distribution curve, you see that a small increase of 1 degree going to the right lead to significant changes. Look at the red area of this graph. The red area significantly changed when we moved the distribution curve from just 1 degree. So 1 degree is something that is clearly relevant. So now let's see why I am talking about 1 degree, because we already have 1 degree since the pre-industrial ages. If we go to next slide, you see that we already have plus 1.1 degree, and we will have plus 2 degree in 2030, and possibly plus 4 degree in 2100. Sorry. So when you consider the future of temperature, it gives you an indication of what kind of reference do I choose if I build a new building, if I have a new project. What do I use in terms of reference? Most of the people use historical data. So it's the left side of this slide. Historical data already leads to 3 times more often extreme temperature. But if you consider future data, you will have, in the scenario of +4 degrees, 9 more often extreme temperature. 2.7 wettest day indicates. So you have to consider future data as a reference and not the current data. And that's what most of the people use. So if we consider +4 degrees, it's a business as usual scenario. What will happen with +4 degrees in the UK? It's on the next slide that there will be a big impact on flood. I saw these figures yesterday on the Financial Times. According to Bank of England, about 2 million homes risk becoming uninsurable in 30 years' time. 2 million homes uninsurable. And we can consider also commercial risk, of course, only due to flood. But you can also consider that extreme events on temperature will be uninsurable also. It's already very difficult to insure a correlation of temperature and activity of your clients, because temperature rarely generates damages. It generally generates non-damage business interruption. It also generates, as we saw, some deaths on health. But if you consider damages on commercial risk or home insurance risk, there is no clear damages due to temperature. However, it will impact our homes and the comfort, the way we live in our homes. So let's go to next slide. If you are still not convinced that there is an emergency to act, in fact, NGOs are convinced and they push for corporate transition, because litigation push for corporate transition. If we go to next slide, how material is climate justice? You perhaps don't know, so someone did it for you. If we go to next slide, it's the Sabin Center of the university that did these slides. And more oftenly, you have some climate litigation happening, not only in the US, but also in Europe. The last one you see on your screen is Client Earth, an NGO that sues Shell's board of directors, not only Shell as a corporate, but directors as individuals. Immediately, because you are brokers, you think that there is an impact on a D&O policy, of course, but also on shareholder value. What is the impact of climate litigation on shareholder value? So recently, there has been a survey. If we go to next slide, there has been a survey on that done by the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and also the Sabin Center for Climate Litigation. And this is done by the London School of Economics. So based on the data of findings and decisions, they consider 108 climate change lawsuits worldwide. And this survey established an evidence correlation between climate litigation and shareholder value. Not that high, okay, it's 0.41% on average. It's not that much you can consider. But what is the value of a shareholder value of stocks? It's billions of pounds. So if you go into more details, for carbon majors, following unfavorable judgments, it can lead to minus 1.50% of decrease in the shareholder value. That's roughly, that's millions of pounds, roughly. If we go to next slide, you will understand that also there is an emergency because regulation is growing also. In the UK, you know the regulation based on the TCFD that is now mandatory, as explained on the next slide. So the TCFD is now mandatory for UK companies with over 500 employees and 500 million pounds in turnover. So that's TCFD is, let's say, in our opinion, because we do a lot and we help companies to do a lot of that kind of reporting, it's easy, more or less, it's easy. But the regulation will grow and grow in the next decades. It has to be, it will happen that reporting, extra financial reporting will increase. So companies need to be prepared on that, and there are not, clearly not. If we go to next slide, we can consider that emergency to act, okay, is good, but it turns to an opportunity to act. And this is where I want to onboard you and to create attention and awareness. Do not be reactive, be proactive. There is an opportunity to act. There is first an opportunity to act because when you consider people that decide in the companies, they are lost. Board members are lost. If we go to next slide, Struggle and Heydrich and Struggle and INSEAD did a survey last year. You see on the right of your screen, 49%, so roughly one board members on two, say that climate change is not considered in companies' investment decisions. So when you look back, when you remember on the figures that I showed you before, and I told you that some millions of homes were uninsurable, you as an individual, will you be the one that do not consider climate change in your investment decisions, or will you be the one that consider climate change in investment decisions? I hope you'll be the one that consider investment decisions. But think about people that decide in companies. 50% of them do not consider climate change in their decisions. So there is an opportunity to train them and to provide them some figures. CEOs are not confident in the level of risk management. So there is a second opportunity for CEOs. Look at the survey done by the World Forum of Davos last year. If we go to next slide, the survey reveals that CEOs are on blue. They are effective or highly, they think that risk management is highly effective, dark blue, or effective blue. Look at the first figures on the bottom. For terrorist attack, they are more or less highly or effective confident or indetermined. But there is only a small part of them that think that it's highly ineffective. And now look at the bottom, the failure to mitigate climate change. A large part of CEOs think that risk management is highly ineffective. More than 25% of them, more than 60% of them, let's say 70% of them think that risk management related to climate change is highly ineffective or ineffective. So there is a big room to improve on how to mitigate climate change and to onboard CEOs in that. A huge room. The CEOs are concerned, but they are not confident in the level of risk management of climate change. If we go to next slide, please. In my opinion, there is an opportunity to act because people invested in risk are not yet enough invested in ESG-related topics. See the survey done in France with the French Risk Manager Association. 60% of them think that some sites, some activities will no longer be insurable. It already happened in Australia, it already happened in California, so insurers stop insuring highly exposed risk. On the other side, so they know that some risk will not be insurable. What they do, in my opinion, they don't do enough, but because look at the next slide. On the next slide, when you ask them, okay, what are you doing on ESG-related risk? Do you talk with the ESG guys? Only 35% of them say yes. Only 35% of them say yes, which means that 65% of them say, I plan to or no. In 2023, that's not enough. That's clearly 100% of people in charge of risk that should be invested also in ESG-related topics. because climate is embedded in ESG-related risks. So my conviction is that 100% of people in charge of risk within companies should be onboarded on that. If we don't bring them this, they will not be on board. So your role, my role, is to onboard them in this adventure. If we go to the next slide, there is also an opportunity to act, because beyond insurance, we have to consider adaptation. Insurance is just a small piece of the answer. It's just a way to finance risk. But adaptation is a variety of actions that are meant to reduce or to compensate adverse impacts. In the UK, there is an adaptation plan for the Thames River. It's called the Thames Adaptation Scheme, something like that. And it will protect, it considers future scenario to protect London and to protect the area of London against extreme floods and tidal flooding generated by the Thames. On the other side, mitigation is absolutely crucial, because mitigation is what companies are doing to reduce or eliminate greenhouse gas emissions and to prevent significant adverse climate effect. So adaptation and mitigation are mandatory. If we go to next slide, you will understand that all countries have plans. In the Netherlands, in France, in Germany, in the UK as well. We all have plans at country level. And what happened since we have plans? In my perception, nothing happened concretely. Nothing happened concretely to adapt to climate change. We spent 10 years to mitigate the impact of climate change, but not to adapt to climate change. And now, because we have heat waves, wildfires, floods, we start thinking about adapting to climate change. And having a plan at country level is not enough, because adaptation is done at local level. So you can onboard your clients. And if we go to next slide, you can onboard your clients to investigate different type of adaptation solutions. The first one, the most extreme one, is to retreat. It's to retreat the activity from a dangerous place. But there are also several ways to adapt to climate change, like protection, adaptation, and accommodation. So there is no one single answer. If we go to the next slide, and before I leave the floor to the questions and to the discussion with Dougie, when you think about climate, and I've talked mainly about climate impact, but don't forget to catch the holistic picture of what's happening. If we go to the next slide, you see most of the people are focusing on carbon emissions. And that's what we have done in the past 10 or 20 years. We have just focused on carbon emission, reducing carbon emission. That's what we have to do, of course. But we have also to consider all the other impacts, like water crisis. Water crisis is something that will happen not in 10 years' time, but now in Europe. It already happened now in France. We have a lot of water crisis. NGOs are demonstrating. Riots are happening because of water riots. Water riots will happen everywhere in Europe. Water crisis is the first reason why people are migrating from their country. Biodiversity loss is also a main issue, impacting all companies, impacting ecosystems, overconsumption of natural resources, of course, and much more. And this leads to what we call the planetary boundaries. It's on the next slide. The planetary boundaries, there are 9 planetary boundaries worldwide. And you see in red, it's the planetary boundaries that have already been over impacted, like the biosphere integrity, like the climate change is just one of them. It's on the right left, upper left. Freshwater change, so is on the right. Ocean acidification is not reached yet, but it leads to massive impact on fishery productions. Think about fishery production in Scotland, salmon industry in Scotland. How many people are living thanks to salmon industry? Thousands of people, millions of people. So planetary boundaries are a whole. This is the holistic picture. So now you have to consider, after my quick speech, think about, if we go to next slide, think about what you are today and what is your position. So you know that there is a change to do. So what agent of change are you currently? What agent of change can you be? This is also an option. And the last one is, what agent of change do you want to be? There is 3 possibilities. What are you? What can you be? And what do you want to be? Depending on your answers on those 3 questions, you can have a role. And all you need to start having a role, in fact, all you need is to start training, of course, and to start with what we have created and what we have done with Dougie and AXA in the UK. You can train for free on Climate School, because Climate School is free for brokers and clients. You can do some free modules, discover the great climate system, the overexploitation of natural resources. You can act on your company footprint. You can act on your own footprint as well. So there are plenty of possibilities. You just need to consider, okay, what I am today, what kind of agent of change I am, what do I want, what can I be, and what do I want to be?
I would really like to thank everyone for taking the time out to join us today. I hope it's been of value. The final poll is still open, where we're asking a question how useful it was, but please feed in also anything else you'd like to hear. More than happy to run more webinars to do a deep dive into parts of climate change or things that impact climate change, be it energy transition and the vehicles, etc. We've got a lot of information that we can share with you, but please talk to us. Please register for Climate School. It is free. I guarantee you will learn something, and we'd really like your feedback in that. If you feel you get clients you wish to offer it to, please offer out the links, or if you wish support from myself or François and the Paris team, again, reach out to us. We're here to support you. We're here to support your customers. This isn't a day today or tomorrow. This is much more long term, and AXA, as one of the largest employers in the world, insurers in the world, are committed to this from the very top right through our businesses across the world, and we're just delighted we can share that with you. So please stay in contact. François, thank you for your time. Thank you for the interest, the excellent information you provided, and we'll speak soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dougie. Thank you, everyone.